So Rabbi said we're going to get back into the Rambam. We have one more Rambam in Perek Aleph, and then which is still a mostly general Hilchos Yom Tov, but that sets the stage for Perek Vav, which deals with Eruv Tavshilin. All right, so we'll just review again Aleph, Tes, and Yud. We did Tes, but I want to see it again because the Magid Mishnah there is very important, and he is mentioned in the Tur Beis Yosef. So we'll just see it again, and then we'll go Halacha Yud also with the Magid Mishnah, and then we will jump to Perek Vav. Oh, Ephraim, you're there.
I'm here.
I already announced that you weren't. I already announced you weren't going to be with us.
I escaped.
Oh, okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, I won't go into all. I won't give everybody the background, but just know that Ephraim is here with Mesiras Nefesh.
No, with pleasure.
Okay, yes, that's true. Yeah. Okay. I mean, you got to tell everybody else that it's Mesiras Nefesh. You can't tell everybody else that you're here for pleasure. You got to tell them I can't miss a shear. Very important. Anyway, Yofi. Okay, so we're in the Rambam Perek Aleph Hilchos Yom Tov Halacha Tes. We did Tes last time. I want to just review it one more time, so we'll see the Magid Mishnah. And just the overview here has to be, we have to keep in mind the machlokas and psachim about how Eruv Tavshilin works, which is built on whether cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos, is it an Isser D'Oraisa or it's completely mutter? Now, how could it be completely mutter? How could cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos be completely mutter?
One Kedusha.
That's okay. And how could it be? And if it's completely usser, midoraisa, how could we make Eruv Tavshilin?
Relying on Ho'il.
Ho'il. That we have a way to avoid the Isser D'Oraisa if we cook on Yom Tov for Yom Tov. Okay? And that's what we're saying here. Let's go test. Ein ofinu mevashin b'Yom Tov, masha yochal b'chol. So there is an Isser D'Oraisa to cook on Yom Tov for chol. V'lo hutra melacha shehi litzorach achila. Again, the question here is, cooking on Yom Tov is a mutter activity. It's a mutter activity, ochel nefesh. It says explicitly that ochel nefesh is mutter, so what's the problem? So says the Rambam, lo hutra melacha shehi litzorach achila, el kedei lehenos ba b'Yom Tov. So the cooking on Yom Tov for ochel nefesh is to benefit on Yom Tov. Asa kedei lechol b'Yom Tov the hotir, but what if I cooked it on Yom Tov for Yom Tov, but there's something left over? So am I allowed to eat what was cooked on Yom Tov on chol? Since we say that you're only allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Yom Tov, so maybe cooking it on Yom Tov blocks in the fact that it can only be used on Yom Tov. So we said no. Muter lechol hamoter b'chol. That was the famous. That was let's see the Magid Mishnah who brings the Gemara. David, is that David Lerner? If it is, we're in the Rambam Hilchos Yom Tov Perek Aleph Halacha Tes. So says the Magid Mishnah. Zemach lokus beperek elu ovrin haofen miyom tov lechol Rav Chizda Omar loke v'Rabba Omar eno loke v'kaimelan kerabba umalkos hu deleka ha'isura ika because it's a hasra safek because of hoel. Also kedei lechol ze pashut v'nilmad midin mishalo ire ve'eruv tashlimin. Kamoshi Yisbayer od beperek zeh. We'll see later. So now let's see the Halacha Yud and the Magid Mishnah. Just 1 second. Yeah, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I didn't need the Magid Mishnah test. I need the Magid Mishnah on Yud. And now we saw that last time. I'm sorry. The Magid Mishnah is Yud and Yud Aleph. I made a mistake testing Yud. Yud and Yud Aleph. Mimale isha kedera basar. Afal pi shein etzricha elo lechaticha achas. So here's the chiddush. You're only allowed to cook what you need for Yom Tov, what you need on Yom Tov. So if a woman needs one piece of meat, the chiddush is she's allowed to fill a pot with meat. And memale nachtom chavish mayim afal pi shein etzarich elo lekitor echad. And the baker can fill a whole pot of water, even though he only needs a little bit of water. Umemala isha tanur pat. And again, in those days, they used to slap the dough on the side of the oven. Why? Okay, okay, so that's again, so that benefits, each of these is really for the benefit of the food that you want to eat on Yom Tov. So when I fill the pot with lots of meat, even though I only did one piece, that one piece will taste better because it was cooked together with other pieces. And therefore it's viewed as tzarech Yom Tov. Umoleach adam kama chatichos basar bivas achas, afal pi she'en tzarech elel chaticha achas. Again, there we said that if we don't let him do that, he won't do it. He won't shech the animal and will compromise Simchas Yom Tov. And since it's not a big tircha, we let him do it as long as he's doing it all at once. Says the Magid Mishnah, Memale, Brisa beperik Yom Tov Shechal. That was our Brisa in Beitz Yud Zayin. Kiloshen Rabbeinu, exactly because of Arash Bezal. Kidei sheyochlu mishmanim, meaning the fattiness of the other pieces will benefit the piece that you want to eat. Lefikach yireli shafilu liten bekedera chaticha achar chaticha afilu laachar sheiniach kedera al gabe ha'esh muter. This is a chiddush, and that's a question, but it's going to be a machlokas rishonim. Do I have to put it all in at once? And the heter would be that, well, I don't need it all, but I'm cooking it because it's going to benefit. But it has to be all at once, like we're going to say with the water, or no, I put one piece on, and then 10 minutes later, I want to put more pieces in. So for water, that would clearly be prohibited. The only way you're allowed to put more water than you need is if you fill up the thing with water and put it on the fire. But default would be that once you put meat on the fire, to add more meat, you're mamish putting in meat shalol l'tzarech Yom Tov. And the chiddush here is that since l'maisa is going to make the meat that's in the pot better, you're allowed to do it even later. But not everybody agrees with that. Okay. Umimale nachtum, ba'osa brayse keloshen Rabbeinu. Because of our Rashba, ubilvad on the water, sheyiten es hakol kodem shiniach chavis al gabe ha'esh. The Rashba says explicitly that the water urn has to be filled before you put it on the fire. You can't put it on the fire and then decide to add water that you don't need because you want to have it for tomorrow. Gatam, what's the difference between the water and the meat? The water doesn't improve whether I have a liter in the urn or I have 10 liters in the urn. The water that I need doesn't improve. Okay, but the meat will improve, and therefore, even after I put the first piece in, I can put another piece in later because it's going to improve the piece that I need for Yom Tov. Even though my intention is that I'm going to use it I'm going to eat it for Shabbos. The lefikach de ato zal. Sha'asur lahosif alehen shelo litzorech. Aval meikar chatirchahu v'shari. So he wants to say that according to the Rashba holds that I can't add the meat afterwards either because of an inyan of Torah. At the end of the day, there's no extra work to put on the fire a pot with one piece or 5 pieces. Okay, but so that's why I can do it. But to put it on later, that's a different problem of tircha. Okay, umemale isha tanur shel bat. We're going to see all this in the Tur Beis Yosef much clearer. Machloka sham v'difsak sham halacha kirab Shimon ben Elazar de amar memale isha tanur pat mipnei shapat yafa b'shas shatanur male, meaning the bread that's in there bakes better when the oven is full of dough. The Rabbeinu Yonah kosav shalohi tiru ela betanurim ketanim v'tzorim. Avalo befurni gedola, meaning our kinds of ovens where it doesn't really matter whether there's a lot in there or not. And again, we'll see this lamaisa in the tour. Umoleach adam kama chatichos. Memra perakama Amar Shmuel moleach adam kama chatichos bevas achas, salting many pieces of meat. Afal pi she'eno tzarech ela chaticha achas. Because so what you're doing is you're salting meat that you don't need for Yom Tov. Od sham Rav Adabar Ava ma'arim umolach garma garma. If you remember, that was the harama that he salted one piece. He didn't do it all at once. He salted a piece, and then he said, this piece isn't so good. Let me salt another piece. It's probably better. And he did that with 5 pieces, not bevasachas. The Rabbeinu Zal Hizkir member de Shmuel, the low cost of the Rav Adabar Ava. The Efsher Shehu Sover Shehim Cholkin Sheshmuel lo hitir ela bevasachas. The Rav Adabar Ava hitir bezu acharzu. Umarim va'omer b'kol echad bezu ani rotze v'kaim elan kishmuel. So that he's understanding that the Rambam understood that there was a machlokes All right, there was a machlokas between Rav Ada and Shmuel. That Shmuel said you're only allowed to do it all at once. After that, you can't do. Once you did one, you can't do more afterwards separately. Whereas Rav Ada bar Ava held I could, and according to that, the Rambam's paskening like Shmuel. Right. Okay. Where am I here? I lost my place. V'Rabbeinu Zal, Hizkir member the Shmuel v'lo kosav the Rav Ada bar Ava. V'efshashu sover shein cholkin sheshmuel lo hitir ela b'vas achas. Rav Ada bar Ava, hitir b'zuach harzu, and the Rambam didn't mention this idea of doing it zuach harzu beharama. The Omer b'chol echad b'zu ani rotze. The Rashba Zal posek k'Rav Ada, not like the Rambam seems to paskin like Shmuel. Because of the Mokam Hefsed Mamono Shalo Yasriach Habasar Hitiru Lo Ha'arama Zu, in order that the meat should not get ruined. We'll see in the Shulchan Aruch how we're going to paskin halacha l'maisa. Let's see Yud Aleph. Hamevashel et ofe biyom tov kidei lechol bo bayom, which is 100%. He's baking or cooking sheyazmin orchid, and he's baking because he intends to invite guests. So that's 100% mutter.
Did we see this in the Rambam?
I'm in Halacha Yud Aleph. I'm reading the Rambam Halacha Yud Aleph.
You're not in the Maggid Mishnah right now.
No, I'm back. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you realized we finished the Maggid Mishnah. I'm back in the Rambam now.
Okay.
He's planning on eating it, or he's planning on inviting guests. And in the end, what happened? He didn't invite the guests, or he didn't eat the food that he was planning on eating. So everybody hear the problem. You cooked on Yontif, and you didn't use it. It's not that you cooked extra, that you cooked extra. You didn't eat what you cooked, and you didn't invite guests that you planned on inviting. V'lo bo'u, v'nishar hatavshil v'hapat. Harei ze muter lechol l'mochar bein b'chol bein b'Shabbos. You're even going to be allowed to eat it b'chol. U'bilvad shelo yarid. Meaning you got to be serious. Were you really planning on inviting? You really cooked it for guests who didn't show up? You were really planning on eating it on Yom Tov and you just got too full? V'im herim asur v'afilu b'Shabbos shachar Yom Tov. Mipnei shechmiru b'marim yoser min amazing. We saw this in the Gemara. I believe we saw the Gemara. Is that if a person cooked b'mezid, he cooked b'mezid on Yom Tov for Shabbos, we say he's allowed to eat it. But if he was marim, we don't allow him to eat it. Because we're more machmer on the marim than we are on the mezid, because if we allow the marim, we're going to basically eradicate the whole requirement of Eruv Tavshilin. People will just always be marim, and therefore they prohibit marim. Mezid, we don't expect him to repeat it, or we hope he won't repeat it. Says the Maggid Mishnah, Yud Aleph in the Maggid Mishnah. Hamevashel ofe b'yom tov, brayso v'perek yom tov shecha, gabe mi she'ochal eruv tavshilin shelo kodem afiyah. Okay, he ate up his Eruv Tavshilin before he cooked. Aval mevashel hu liyom tov v'im hotir l'Shabbos ubilvad shelo yari. That's what we saw, is that you're cooking extra as long as you're not intending to use it for Shabbos, but you're cooking and it got left over. V'im herim osur v'omer Rav Ashi ditfei chmir b'marim v'im bebezid v'izvar din zeh perak shishi, which we're going to go to in a minute. In 1 minute, we're going to go to Perek Shishi. Umisham lomad Rabbeinu de kol shekein b'marim l'tzorach chol she'asur v'chein kasuv ha'meforshim. All right, so this is basically what we have in Hilchos Yom Tov. Let's turn now to Perek Vav. All right, Perek Vav, we have a lot of halachas in Perek Vav. This is the Perek on Eruv Tavshilin. Yeah, we're doing the Rambam because we're going to see the Rambam takes sides in certain machlokasin, and then we're going to go to the Tur and see that he'll bring the Tur Beis Yosef will show you how not everybody agrees with the Rambam. Although everybody might agree lamaisa with certain things, but the reason for din, again, we're ending up going to say that what problem does Eruv Tavshilin solve? That could have a very big difference in lamaisa, how we behave on Yom Tov for Shabbos. We'll see. Okay, says the Rambam, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Perek Vav. Yom Tov shechal lios Erev Shabbos. Ein ofin umevashlim biyom tov mashu ochel l'machar b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to bake for Shabbos. Freeze frame. Why not? What's the problem? D'oraisa or d'Rabbanan?
Durabanan.
Josh, you want to weigh in?
It's a machlokas.
Thank you, Pinchas, for jumping ahead. It's machlokas, the Raisa D'Rabbanan. That was the machlokas. So the Rambam says, Isur zemi divrei sofrim kidei shelo yovel levashel miyom tov l'chol. So clearly, according to the Rambam, the Raisa D'Rabbanan,
Durabanan.
it's only the Rabbanan. According to the Rambam, and he's passing like the sheet in the Gemara, that be'etzem, because it's kedusha achas, it's mutter levashel miyom tov l'shabbos. However, they made an isur d'Rabbanan to do it because if you're mevashel for Yom Tov to Shabbos, which is mutter, next year you may, when Yom Tov comes out on Tuesday, you'll be mevashel for Yom Tov to Chol. Okay, shekal v'chomer, who the person makes a kal v'chomer to himself. L'Shabbos eino mevashel kol sheken l'chol. If I don't let him cook from Shabbat, from Yom Tov to Shabbos, he certainly will never come to cook from Yom Tov to Chol. Lefikach. So here the Rambam now is giving you the whole background of the structure of Eruv Tavshilin, according to the sheet that it's mutter de oraisa, and it's only the Rabbanon in order that he shouldn't make a mistake to cook from Yom Tov to Chol. Lefikach, again the lefikach is because it's only aser de Rabbanon. Lefikach im aser tavshil me erev Yom Tov sheyasomech alav umivashel va'ofe biyom tov l'Shabbos harei mutter. So really, according to the Rambam, the Eruv Tavshilin is a heker. Since the whole problem is that he might come to cook from Yom Tov to Chol, so if he knows that if he does something separate, special, on Erev Yom Tov, it will remind him that, hey, I can't cook from Yom Tov to Chol, because even Yom Tov l'Shabbos, I can only do it if I make an Eruv. And therefore, and now, what's the Lashon, according to the Rambam, of Eruv Tavshilin? What's the Lashon? I don't know if anybody was ever bothered by that, right? Eruv Tavshilin. Tavshil shesomech alav hu anikra eruve tavshilin. Okay, and again, because right, the lama nikra eruv halacha beis shekeshem sha eruv sheosin bechatzeros umavos me'erev Shabbos mishum heker kedei shelo yale al daitem shemut lohosi mirishus l'rishus b'Shabbos. If you remember, eruv chatzeros, again, the same problem. The rabbis legislated something that was mutter midoraisa to carry from one rishus hayachid to another rishus hayachid. Midoraisa, that's mutter, and the rabbis legislated aser. So, but what they did is they created a system called eruv chatzeros, where what you can do is you can combine the two chatzeros into one chatzer, and that's the lashon of eruv le'arev, to mix chatzer A with chatzer B, and that permits the carrying. That permits the isur d'Rabbanan to go from Chatzar A to Chatzar B because of Eruv. It's united together. So the Rambam says that this is really a borrowed Lashon. We're not really doing any Eruv. We're not doing mixing things together, according to the Rambam, when we do Eruv Tavshilin. All right, but Kach Zat Tavshil Mishum Heker V'Zichron Kedei Shelo Yedamu V'Yachshavu Shemuter Lefos B'Yom Tov Masha Eino Ochel Bo B'Yom Lefikach Nikra Tavshil Zeh Eruve Tavshilin. According to the Rambam, it's simply it's a reminder, and since the reminder of Eruv Chatzeros to remember about carrying from one Chatzer to another is done through Eruv Chatzeros, we borrow that lashon of Eruv to talk about Eruv Tavshilin to make a reminder of the Isser D'Rabbanan. Okay. Not everybody agrees with that, but that's the Rambam, which again, it makes good sense. Once you start on the road, that basically it's mutter mishabbos liyom tov l'shabbos. Ella, what? We're afraid that you're going to cook to Sunday, and therefore we need to make our heker, and that heker is parallels the heker we make in an eruv chatzeros. Eruv chatzeros is literally the lashon eruv chatzeros. We're combining together two chatzeros to allow you to carry from chatzer A to chatzer B. So we're borrowing that lashon and call it eruv tavshilin to make a heker about cooking. Okay, let's see the Ravid. Okay, there's a Ravid there. The Lama Nikra Shmo Eruv. Because of a Ravid, Hatamazeh Linna'arim. It's a little bit childish. But the Rambam, the Ravid many times has very strong language. This is a gentle way that the Ravid argues on the Rambam. There's many stronger examples if you guys have seen Ravids. Okay, anyway, so Tam said Linari, Kihu Shaul me'eruv chatzeros kolomar ze mishum heker hu v'ze mishum heker hu. Ma ze shmo eruv av ze shmo eruv. Ve'eno kain, the Raiva does not. You could tell from the first words of the Raiva, if he calls it a Nairim, then it's not. He's not going to agree with that. Ela shehu me'arev tzorchei Shabbos in tzorchei Yom Tov la'asusam yachad. The Raiva says very simple. I'm combining the needs of Yom Tov with the needs of Shabbos, all right? And therefore, I started cooking for Shabbos before Yom Tov, and the cooking on Yom Tov is combined with the cooking of Shabbos. That's the Raiva. Okay, more straightforward. Again, we don't need to go into that machlokas series. I just thought it was very nice to see that. Okay, next, halacha gimel. Eruv Tavshilin shiuro ein pachos mikazayis ben lechad ben la'alafi. Vein osim eruv zeh lo bepat v'lo berifut uchiyotze bohen ela betavshil. Again, so we're talking here about allowing you to cook. You need a tavshil. Shehu parperet kigon basar dagim uveitzim uchiyotze bohen. Ve'afilu adoshim shebishule kedera v'afilu shamnunis shal gabe asakin. If you remember, we said that all can be designated, even though it wasn't originally intended to be for Shabbos, right? Shecholchin bo hatzli gordo im yesh bo kizayit somech halav mishum erev tavshilin. Okay, so again, he's going in two directions. On the one hand, he's being makil. You don't need a kazayis for everybody, but you need a kazayis. When we get into the later poskim, we're going to see that there is a shita that requires a beitza. Okay, a kabetza. But the Rambam is very clear, and it sounded from the Gemara like a kazayit was certainly enough. Okay, now tavshil sha'omru le'inyan eruv zeh, afilu tzvi, afilu sholok, afilu kavush, meaning anything that has a status called cooked, because kavush is pickled, which we say kavush kimavushal, so even though it wasn't actually cooked, it has a status of cooked. O meushan, smoked, afilu dogim tanim shidichan b'mayim chamim ve'adachasanu bishulon la'achila reza somech aleh. Meaning anything that the way you prepare it has some kind of structure of cooking, that's good enough for eruv, but it's got to be cooked on some level. Okay, and we'll talk about what the ramifications are when just to see the problem. Somebody took his egg on Shabbos for Shalashudas, and he made an Eruv Tavshilin with an egg and a piece of matzah, and then he cracks open the egg at Shalashudas. Yes, Pinchas recognizes what's happened. All of a sudden, it's all over the plate. He accidentally took a raw egg. All right, he took a raw egg. As my Rav said, that's what happens when you let the men do it. They can't tell the difference between a hard-boiled egg and a raw egg. Anyway, so we're gonna. Why am I mentioning it? Because that could have a ramification. So is his Eruv good? His Eruv is clearly not good. Okay, so now was he violating all of his cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos was no good? He's not allowed to eat it. We'll talk about that when we get much later into the postgame. Okay, but
wait a second. So he did have one tavshil. He had the matzah.
That's not a tavshil. That's pot. According to Beis, pot only works to allow you to. If you have tavshil alone, that's basically. If you have tavshil alone, you can cook and bake. If you have a pot alone, you can only bake. You can't cook. Okay. We saw that I think along the way, but we'll see it again. Okay. V'tzarich sheyeh eruv zeh matzui. Ad sheyof yefek kol mashu tzarich. In other words, the eruv has to be in existence all day Friday, at least until you finish your cooking for Shabbos. All right, sheyof kol mashu tzarich le'efos v'levashel kol tzarich levashel. V'yachem chamin kol shu tzarich. V'inechal ha'eruv o ovad o nisraf kodem sheyevach shel o yofeh. So what happens if before you did your Shabbos cooking on Friday, something happened to the Eruv? Harei ze osur le'efot ulevashel o lehecham ela mashu ochel b'yom tov bilvad. Now, if you remember, we had a little tricky thing of, it said batchila. So what happens if so what I cooked originally, pretty much everybody agrees that's okay. Now, as I'm cooking, I have 5 things to cook, and I cooked 3 things, and then the Eruv got lost. I can't cook anymore. But what I cooked is fine. Okay? But here's what we talked about, the idea of starting to cook. Hitchil bi'isoso o b'tavshilo. How about if I'm in the middle of baking my bread? I'm kneading it and I'm in the middle. Or I'm in the middle of preparing a tavshil. And then the Eruv gets lost, says the Rambam, hareze gomer, you're allowed to finish. Okay? Which, again, that's built on the Lashon of lo yavashel b'tchila. You're not allowed to start your cooking after the Eruv gets lost. But you're allowed to finish what you started. You're allowed to finish what you started. Okay, I hope this resonates with you from what we learned in the Gemara, I hope.
So,
Okay.
so according to what Rabbi Karlinsky is saying, you don't even necessarily have to put it on the heat yet.
Correct. It says that you're right. I'm kneading the dough that's already, because the malacha that I'm not allowed to do on Yom Tov for Shabbos already starts with the kneading. So I've already started the malacha of preparing the food for Shabbos with the Eruv intact. I'm allowed to finish. That comes from the lashon of lo yavashel betchila. You're not allowed to start something. But again, that's the Rambam's deal. Not everybody would agree with that. Some you'll see some Rishonim would say, hard stop. The minute that Eruv is gone, you're not allowed to do anything else. Anything else that's considered chilul yontif. Okay? All right. So we did hey. Right, we're going to do vav. If you want to make an Eruv not just for you, but that other people should also be able to cook based on your Eruv, tzorach lizakos lahen kederach shemizakin be'eruv Shabbos. Meaning you have to be able to hand the Eruv to somebody else so that it's ki'ilu, the other person also has a part in that Eruv. The kol shezocha be'eruv Shabbos zocha be'eruv Tavshilin, kol she'eno zocha be'osa Eruv eno zocha be'zeh. So I'm not sure. I remember that my father always did some kind of a zikui, but I think he got it only because his father, who was the Rav of the town, did it. Now, if you're doing an Eruv just for your household, then you don't need a zikui. But if you're doing your Eruv for others, and again, the Rav does it for the whole town, there has to be zikui. Ephraim, when you do Eruv Tavshilin, do you include the zikui al yedei acherim, or you just say it and you do it?
I just do it. How does the zikui work? Like the people not in your house.
Okay, so I want to do an Eruv for you, so that you will be able to cook based on my Eruv. So we already decided in the Gemara that works. However, how does it work? It works by me being a shliach for you, and you have to start the cooking. So you have to own the food that I started cooking for you. So you have to be a partner in the food that was cooked on Eruv Yontif for Yontif.
So what do? You give me the matzah and the egg? How does it physically work?
Ziku, you have to make a kinyan in it, and there's going to be a big issue when we get to the halachas. The Rambam alludes to it here. I'll read you the words of the Rambam, and then I'll elaborate on what.
How does the Rav do this for the entire community?
He brings in a neighbor. He brings in his shamas, and he says the lashon of the Eruv, and he says, and I'm doing it for the entire community, and he gives the Eruv, the egg and the matzah, to the shamas to be zoche for the community.
I see.
That's exactly. But look what the Rambam says, and I'll explain to you what the issue is. Kol shezocha, the end of halacha vav. Kol shezocha be'eruv Shabbos zocha be'eruv Tavshilin. Because when you want to make an Eruv Chatzeros, you have to be mizake it so that everybody in the courtyard, in the whatever, in the Eruv, has ownership in that bread that you're putting away for the Eruv. So so I own it, but everybody has to own it. So if I own something and I want you to make a kinyan in it for Pinchas and for Doug, I can't give it to my wife, because giving it to my wife is giving it to me. I can't give it to my kid, because it hasn't left my reshus. And therefore I have to call in somebody who's not part of my household to give it to him to be zocha for the other people. So it's ironic here is that your Eruv, and this is going to be, we'll try to talk about it when we get into the halacha l'maisa. If your kids come over to you for Yontif, do they need their own Eruv, or are they included in your Eruv? Do guests need their own Eruv, or are they included in your Eruv? So your kids, according to most opinions, obviously your little kids are clearly included in your Eruv, and your wife is included in your Eruv. But that's exactly why you can't use your wife to be zocha for somebody else, because she's already included in the Eruv you're making. So the zechi has to be somebody who's not included in your Eruv. Okay, and the question is whether guests are automatically included in your Eruv or not. Again, we'll have to see that when we get more to the Shulchan Aruch Mishnah Brura. We're gonna be when we do this, we're gonna end up in the Mishnah Brura, guys, because that's gonna be our halachas l'maisa. This is all background. Okay. Right. Vav Zion. Okay, so we did Vav. Yes. Okay. So we're gonna plow ahead. Zion. Einot tzarich lahodia le'elu shezachal lehem me'erev Yom Tov. You don't have to tell them beforehand. Meaning, the Rav can do it for other people before he told them that he's doing it. In other words, the Rav can do, we talked about this, whether it needs das. What he's saying here is that the Rav can do it without consulting with the people he's being mizakeh for. But they have to know after the fact that he did it for them. In other words, they can't just cook without knowing or assuming that the Rav did it for them. What he's saying is they don't have to know beforehand. When the Rav does it, he doesn't have to consult with them or tell them. But he has to tell them, but they have to know on Yom Tov. We alluded to that in the Gemara where it said that the Amoraim did for the whole city, but they were modia them on Yom Tov that we did an Eruv and it's okay for you to cook. Okay, but even though you didn't tell them beforehand. V'yesh lo l'adam la'ariv al kol ha'ir v'al kol ha'karov elea b'toch ha'tchum u'lemocher machriz v'omer kol mi shelo iniach Eruv Tavshilin yismoch al eruvi. Again, the idea is that you could do it for them before without them knowing it, as long as the next day you tell them, because if they don't know you did an Eruv, they're not allowed to cook. And therefore you have to tell them, and they have to know that you made the Eruv for them to allow them to cook. Okay, again, this is going to get into the person who forgot. Well, let's read on a little more. Haminiach Eruv Tavshilin chayv levorech. All right, we have a bracha. Bracha ta Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvah v'zivanu al mitzvahs Eruv. The Omer be'eruv zeh yutarli le'efot ulevashel miyom tov shel mochar l'shabbos. That's the lashon in the siddur. V'im zocha bo le'acherim, meaning he's doing the eruv for other people also. Yomar li uleploni. Oh, as the Rav usually says, la'anshe ha'ir kulo le'efot v'levashel b'yom tov l'shabbos. Okay. Now, what happens with somebody who didn't do an eruv? He didn't do Eruv Tavshilin. So remember, in theory, if there is no Eruv Tavshilin, we have at least an Isur D'Rabbanan of cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos. It could even be an Isur D'Oraisa, okay? But the Rambam is working with the assumption that it's an Isur D'Rabbanan to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, but it's an Isur D'Rabbanan. So Mishalo Hiniach Eruv Tavshilin. V'lo inichu lo acherim. No Eruv. If you remember, we talked about whether the fact that somebody has flour on Yom Tov, when no Eruv was made, nobody is allowed to use that flour to cook for the guy, because that guy is everything he owns is usher to be cooked from Yom Tov to Shabbos. The usher la'acher sheiniach la'afsmo levashel v'lafos lezeh shelo iniach ad sheiknelo. Right, and you can't cook for somebody who didn't do an Eruv because you're doing cooking for somebody who's not allowed to cook. So the only way you can use his flour is he has to transfer ownership to you. We saw this in the Gemara. So I'm allowed to cook my food for you, but I'm not allowed to cook your food for you. He can give it to him. He can give it to him. All right. So he didn't do an Eruv, and he cooked for Yom Tov. V'hotir, and he left over some of the food. He had more food than he needed. He didn't do it intentionally. He cooked for Yom Tov without an Eruv, and some food got left over. Will he be allowed to eat it on Shabbos? We already decided for sure. Even without an Eruv, right? That was the woman can fill up you can cook for Yom Tov. V'im hotir, as long as you're not married. Oh, shezimen orchim v'lo bo, or you cooked for guests and they never showed up. Hareze ochel hamutar lemocha. So even without an Eruv, if you had leftover food, either because you cooked it intending to use it on Yom Tov, or you intended to serve it to guests who just never showed, so then you are, even without an Eruv, allowed to use it after Yontif, on Shabbos. Vim Harim, but if you said, oh well, I'm going to invite guests when you knew you're not inviting guests and there's no guests available, and you knew there is no way you're going to use this food on Yontif. All right, so then Hareza Asur L'Ochlo, you're not going to be allowed to eat it on Shabbos. Okay, so that is the Ma'ari. What about Ovar ve'ofa ubishel Shabbos? What about the guy without an Eruv? He did it. He did it amazing. Listen, I didn't do an Eruv. It's Yontif. You're allowed to cook on Yontif, and he cooked on Yontif for Shabbos. So remember, he only violated an Isur D'Rabbanan, according to the Rambam. Ein Osrin Alav. Ironically, and this is what we saw, that they penalized the Marim more than the Mezid. The Lama Ichmiru v'Osru al HaMarim v'lo Osru al HaMezid. And again, according to the Rambam, it makes a lot of sense because the Mezid is only violating an Isur D'Rabbanan. So the question is whether you violated an Isur D'Rabbanan. You certainly are over there. Question is whether we're going to penalize you and not let you use the food that you cooked the Isur D'Rabbanan. Shim tater lemarim nimtzu akol ma'arim v'yishtaku shein erev tavshilin. If we're going to allow a guy to always say, well, I don't really have guests, but I'll say that I'm cooking for the guests who are never coming, then you basically eradicated the whole system of erev tavshilin. Aval hamezid eino matzui. It's not likely that a Torah Jew is going to do b'mezid. I mean, if he doesn't, we're not talking about a person who doesn't care. We're talking about somebody who cares. And therefore, the fact that he did it now, oh yeah, I forgot my Eruv. Nobody made Eruv for me. You know, I can't go into Shabbos without cooked food. And it's only an Isur D'Rabbanan. You know, there's all kinds of justifications. So we're not worried he's going to do it again. Okay? All right. That was Halacha Yud. Halacha Yud Aleph. This is Nogeya more to our Chutz La'aretz members. Shnei Yomim Tovim Shechalu Lios B'Chamishi V'Erev Shabbos. So this happened for Pesach for the Bnei Chutz La'aretz. It's very rare. I'm sorry, it can never happen in Israel except Rosh Hashanah, and we'll see Rosh Hashanah has a different din. Okay, but there's no such thing in Israel as 2 days Yom Tov, not Rosh Hashanah, 2 days Yom Tov followed by a Shabbos. In America, in Chutz La'aretz, it's very common. Okay, it happened Pesach. It's going to happen again next Pesach. It happens many times on Sukkot when Sukkot comes out on Thursday. Okay, so we have 2 days Yom Tov, Thursday, Friday. Osa Eruv, when are you going to make your Eruv? Osa Eruv Tavshilin miyom revi'i shu Eruv Yom Tov. You make the Eruv on Wednesday. What happens if you forgot? Can you make the Eruv on Thursday? Shachach v'lo miniach berishon umatne. You're allowed to, in Chutz La'aretz, you're allowed to say, okay, it's now Thursday. I didn't make an Eruv. So I'm going to make an Eruv on Thursday and say, Tanai. See, there are only two possibilities, midoraisa. Thursday is either Yom Tov, in which case Friday is Chol. Or Thursday is Chol, and Friday is Yom Tov. So therefore, if you're in Chutz La'aretz, 2 days Yom Tov, remember, 2 days Yom Tov means one is Yom Tov and one is not Yom Tov. Sveika Dioma. We're talking in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. It's a Sveika Dioma. So the guy says, it's now Thursday. I didn't make an Eruv on Wednesday. I'm going to make an Eruv today with a Tanai. Because if today is Chol, I'm perfect. I'm making an Eruv on Chol so that I can cook on Friday for Shabbos, which is Yom Tov. And if today is Yom Tov, I'm making an Eruv that's completely unnecessary. Because I'm allowed to cook on Friday for Shabbos because Friday is Chol. So that's what the guy can do. Let's see that inside. Shnei Yomim Tovim Shechalu Lios Chamishi Ve'erev.
Wait a second. I want to challenge the assumption. On the first day of Yom Tov, how can there be a Havamina that's not Yom Tov?
Because it's Sveika Dioma. Why are you keeping 2 days Yom Tov? Because we're not sure whether because of Kiddush HaChodesh was in doubt. We're not sure if today is the 15th of the month, or it's the 14th, or it's the 14th of the month.
Yeah, but in all other manners, in all other issues of Dina Yom Tov, it's the second day that we're making on because there's safek. We assume that the first day is definitely Yom Tov, isn't it? Like we bury people on the second day of Yom Tov. If we thought that the second day of Yom Tov was Yom Tov, we wouldn't be burying people.
Okay, so the answer is that once we have a fixed calendar, it becomes very different. We're talking here in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, where they were Mekadesh al pi Re'iyah.
Oh, then there definitely was a suffix.
Okay, and therefore it's only one of the days is real Yom Tov. But the opposite, according to you, what you're saying is, so we know that really Thursday is Yom Tov. Friday is just, something. So therefore, you don't even need an Eruv Tavshilin. In theory, okay.
It's funny because the Rambam's text looks like he's paskening the halacha and not speaking about what they did 1,000 years before him.
That's a good question.
What did he say again? Can you repeat that?
Yeah, it looks like the Rambam is paskening, right? Right. This is a Sefer Halacha we're reading. Yet in the Rambam's day, we had a fixed calendar.
So did we see this in the Gemara? The Maggid Mishnah brings in Halacha Yirav. Let's finish the Halacha and then we'll see the Maggid Mishnah one-liner, and maybe we need to go back to see that we may not have focused enough on that Gemara. Again, Shnei Yomim Tovim Shechol Eliyos B'Chamishi V'Erev Shabbos Osa Eruv Tavshilin Miyom Revi'i Shu Erev Yom Tov Shachach V'Lo Iniach Menicho B'Rishon U'Masne Ketzad Meniach Eruv Tavshilin B'Yom Chamishi V'Omer Im HaYom Yom Tov L'Mocher Chol L'Mocher Avashel V'Ofel Shabbos V'Ein Yitzorch Klum because it's Chol V'Im HaYom Chol U'L'Mocher Yom Tov Be'eruv Zeh Yutar Li Lefos U'Lavashel L'Mocher Miyom Tov L'Shabbos. So wait, there is a Hagos Maimonides here, which I did not see before. No, okay, he just connects it to Erev Chatzeros. So let's just see, there's a one-liner in the Maggid Mishnah. Shnei Yomim Tovim, Sham Omer Rabba, Meiniach Adam Erev Tavshilin, Miyom Tov Lechavero, Umasne. So that was in the Gemara at the time of Rabba already. Okay, I hear the question. Okay, we'll have to see when we get to the tour. I hear the question. And you're assuming that the Rambam's paskin even for today. And you're saying today we don't really treat both days as fekos. We always treat the first day as real Yom Tov and the second day as Minhag Avosenu B'Yadei. I hear the question. Okay, we'll have to see it when we get to the tour. I'm sure it'll be dealt with. Okay, let me just see here where else I wanted to go. I think here we go. I think we're going to keep going. This was Halacha Yud Aleph. Okay, we're skipping Yud Beis and going to Yud Gimel. Okay. Bamed Dvarim Amur. Okay. Bamed Dvarim. I forgot already. I prepared this so long ago. I forgot everything that it says. Bamed Dvarim Amur Mishnei Yomim Tovim Shel Golios. Oh no, I'm sorry. Right, we talked about the difference between regular 2 days Yom Tov and Rosh Hashanah. Bamed Dvarim Amurim. When do we say all of this about the Tanai, etc.? B'shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Golios. Aval b'shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah. Im Shochach v'lo hiniach b'Yom Revi'i Shuv Eino Meiniach. He can't do it anymore because we have a Yom Arichta. Ella, what does he do? Somech al acherim im ervu olav. O maknikim chol lemi she'irev. O yeh oser lefos v'lvashel l'Shabbos. He's got 3 possibilities. He either relies on the Rov who made an erev for him. He transfers ownership of his flour and food so that somebody else can cook for him, or he doesn't cook for Shabbos. V'chenim shachach v'lo hifrish truma miyom revi shuvein amafrish ad motzei Shabbos. That was halacha Yud Gimel, Yud Beis that we skipped. That has to do with a person who forgot to take trumas and meisos. Okay, Yud Dalid, very important. Right. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Did I skip something? Oh, yeah, no, I think I did do the Hagos Maimonides. Let me see, make sure. No, I didn't. We'll have to go back to it. I'll go back to it before we finish this all. Okay. We have now Yud Daled. Kol hadvarim ha'elu shamarnu. Oh, I'm sorry. The Rambam goes, yeah. Kol hadvarim ha'elu shamarnu hayu bizman shayu bezin shel Eretz Yisrael mekachin al pi ha're'iyah. V'hayu b'nei ha'galuyos osin shnei yomim kidei listalik min ha'safek. Okay, Pinchas, there's your answer. Lefi shelo hayu yodin yom shekitshu b'nei Eretz Yisrael. Aval hayom sheb'nei Eretz Yisrael somchin al ha'cheshbon umekadshin alav ein yom tov sheni lehistalik min ha'safek ela minag bilvad ulefikach ani omer she'ein ma'arib adam u'masna b'zman hazeh lo erev tavshilin lo erev chatzeros v'lo shitufei mavos ve'eno maser hatevel al tanai Ela kol me'erev Yom Tov bilvad. Meaning this whole idea of masne, now that we have 2 days, mitzad minhag avosenu b'yadenu, and it's not a suffix, you can't do this anymore.
Meaning to make the Eruv on Thursday.
Correct, with a Tanai. Okay, even though it was interesting in the Gemara, it was Rabbah who said it. But again, even Rabbah must have been talking about the time when there was a Beis Hamikdash. That's clearly what the Rambam holds. I just want to go back because I skipped the Hagos Maiminis that I wanted to see. I made a note here to see in Halacha Gimel. Let's go back to Halacha Gimel. And the Hagos Maiminis, everybody has Hagos Maiminis, of course. It is the Sif Katan Gimel. So let's read the Halacha Gimel again. Eruv Tavshilin shi'uro ein pachos mikazayis, bein lechad bein lalafim. Vein osim eruv zel lo bepat, velo berifus, uchiyotza ben ela betavshil, shu parperet, kigon basar dagim yotzim kiyotze ben. Says the Hagos Maiminis. The Chaim Pirush Rashi, you see the Gimel, the Hagos Maiminis and Gimel. The Chaim Pirush Rashi, the Chaim Heshiv Ribar Yehuda, the pat below tavshil lo sagi. If you only did it on pot, you're only allowed to bake. You're not allowed to cook. Aval tavshil below pot, sagi betavshil echad. The Amarava, halacha ketana didan, ve'aliba de beis Hillel, that holds all I need is one tavshil. V'chein pasku b'sheiltot, v'chein ri ben Rabbeinu Meir, allows only one tavshil is enough to be both cooking and baking, but a pot alone is not enough to cook. Omnam, halachas gedolas v'Rabbeinu Tam v'Rabbeinu Shimshon pasku detzarch tavshil upat. V'chol hanid yamrinan hasam lo shono el tavshil aval pat lo hainu dafka levasha aval le'efos boy pat. There as a machlokas in the Rishonim, whether tavshil alone allows you to cook and bake, or no, tavshil lets you to cook, pot lets you bake. Everybody agrees that pot alone doesn't allow you to cook. V'hinei kosav ri in the Tosos sheragil la'arid bepat v'tavshil kidei lekayim haminhag ulatzesi de kol raboseinu. Meaning, if you and that's what we do pot and we do tavshil and pot because we're covering all we're fulfilling all the shitos. Afal pishin nemer lo divrei harav Yitzchak ben Rabbeinu Meir sheposak de betavshil echad sagi kidei mefurish betosfos v'chein kosav Rashi sherabu nohugu betavshil upat. Okay. Anyway, we paskin tavshil and pot. Maybe I'll just say a word. We'll get to this, I think, in the Shulchan Aruch. No, I'll have to show you a later posting. Our minhag, as all of us, most of us, does anybody do Eruv Tavshilin with anything except a tavshil of a hard-boiled egg?
Everybody on occasion that we've taken a piece of pashtida that was baked for the shlishis and we use that.
What, pashtida? What, kugel?
Yeah, or pashtida, or a quiche.
Okay. It's got to be, make sure that it's mostly cheese or broccoli or something, because otherwise it has a din of pot.
No. It would be, the gear is vegetables and eggs.
Okay.
And
But most of us take a hard-boiled egg. It's interesting. I'll show you a source. I'm going to send the source later. Where did this idea of a hard-boiled egg come from?
We've used fish.
What?
We've used fish.
Okay. Which is fundamentally, what you're supposed to be doing is cooking on Wednesday for the food for Shabbos. And therefore, according to, we'll see in Achronim, you're supposed to take a tavshil chashuv. Tavshil chashuv. Hard-boiled egg may not be a tavshil chashuv. Okay? A piece of fish is. A piece of chicken is. The idea is you're supposed to start your yontif cooking, and you're supposed to start your Shabbos cooking on Wednesday. So where did this idea of a hard-boiled egg come from? So I'm going to show you. I'll print out the source, but it's mentioned that in the old days, if on Wednesday you took a piece of meat for Shabbos, what was going to happen to that meat?
Going to spoil.
Exactly. They didn't have refrigeration. The thing that was guaranteed to last from Wednesday to Shabbos was a hard-boiled egg.
That's also the liffy.
No, a hard-boiled egg, it doesn't need refrigeration. Okay? For 3 days. It needs it for 2 weeks, but not for 3 days. Anyway, so that's why they took a hard-boiled egg. So this achron, it's already not, it's an early achron. It's not 10 years ago. Okay, said really we shouldn't be using a hard-boiled egg nowadays because we have refrigeration, and therefore we should be using a tafshil chashuv. I'm just pointing it out. Okay, I mean, all of us have a minhag of, we remember as little kids that our parents always took a hard-boiled egg and a matzah. Okay, but in theory, it should have been. In theory, there's an idea that it should be dvarim chshuvim. Okay, and therefore it should be a nice challah and a piece of fish.
What if
Anyway,
what if the fish was prepared on Monday or Tuesday?
With refrigeration, it's still chashuv.
Yeah.
Remember that comes back to the idea that you're allowed to take the leftover bottom of the pot of the beans, because it doesn't have to be prepared for Shabbos as long as it's designated for Shabbos. So you definitely can compare that. You can prepare the fish on Monday. Okay, when you have a 3-day yontiv, I'm sure your wife would like to do as many things as possible earlier in the week and not wait for Wednesday to start doing everything. So for sure, that was the din of the beans at the bottom of the pot are allowed to be used even though they weren't cooked explicitly for Shabbos because they're designated for Shabbos. So the fish cooked on Monday could definitely be used. By the way, the hard-boiled egg also could be. But the idea here is it's a very nice idea, is that if you want to take a tafshil chashuv, where did this hard-boiled egg come from? It came only because they didn't have refrigeration, and that was the only thing, that was the tafshil that they could have confidence that it will still be usable on Shabbos. Okay, that is all the Rambams we needed. I think already do you have the tour easily available? We can start the tour for 5 minutes?
Yeah,
okay.
I got it.
The tour, okay, so let me pull out my tour. The tour is going to start in Taf Kuf Gimel. We'll just start today a couple of halachas. And it's good because I want to see the tour before we get to the Beis Yosef, because the Beis Yosef access is in the beginning something that's mentioned later in the tour. Okay, so Taf Kuf Gimel. Again, we have two different simanim here, as we did in the Rambam. The first Rambam we saw was Hilchos Yom Tov, and only later did he come in with Hilchos Eruv Tavshilin, because you first got to know what you are or not allowed to do on Yom Tov, and then we'll figure out what you are allowed to do through Eruv Tavshilin that you wouldn't be allowed to do without Eruv Tavshilin. So first you got to know what you're allowed and not allowed to do on Yom Tov. Okay, so Taf Kuf Gimel. Okay, so give everybody another half a minute to find it. Orach Chaim Taf Kuf Gimel. Asur levashel biyom tov, ela kedei tzorech hayom. And the din of cooking on Yom Tov, again, we have to remember, basically, Yom Tov, there's Isser Malacha. There's Isser Malacha on Shabbos, there's Isser Malacha on Yom Tov, and maybe we'll have to once talk about this, there's also Isser Malacha on Chol HaMoed. Except, Shabbos has no heterim except Pikuach Nefesh. Yom Tov has a heter of Ochel Nefesh, and Chol HaMoed has other heterim. But basically, the default is you're not allowed to do Malacha on Yom Tov, except Ochel Nefesh, and therefore, Asur Levashel B'Yom Tov, Ela Kedei Tzorech Hayom. What I need for Yom Tov, that's what I'm allowed to cook. Ve'afilu miyom tov lechaveiro, o miyom tov l'Shabbos asur. Here, the Torah is not tipping his hand about whether Yom Tov l'Shabbos is asur de oraisa or asur de rabban. He's not tipping his hand yet. Aval mimale isha hakederos midbosar afal pi she'ein tzricha ela lechaticha achas mipnei shatavshil mitkan yoter kishiyesh harbe pigedela. So you see clearly that the default was that you're not allowed to cook 5 pieces of meat on Yom Tov if you only need 1 piece. That's the din of you're only allowed to cook what you need for today. And the only reason you're allowed to cook 5 pieces of meat on Yom Tov, even though you only need 1 piece, is because it makes the 1 piece better. And therefore it's considered part of the activity of cooking for Yom Tov. V'yesh omrim dafilo omra b'feirush, she rotza oso litzorech machar shu muter. Meaning she says, you know why I'm putting these extra 4 pieces of meat? Because I need them for Shabbos. That already might be a little bit sketchy, because it's very clear you're not doing it to improve the meat taste of the meat. But since it doesn't improve the taste of the meat, we consider it as if you're doing it for Yom Tov. But not everybody agrees with that if you do it explicitly, if you say it explicitly. Now she's allowed to do it without, remember, there are 3 levels. They're saying, you're saying explicitly, I'm only doing it because it improves the taste of the meat. That's for sure mutter. You say, I'm doing it because I need food for Shabbos. That's a machlokas. But everybody agrees that's what the Gemara says. If you don't say anything, you're putting in 5 pieces of meat, knowing that you only need 1 piece of meat, you're okay. V'yesh osra. Okay. V'nira shehu muter. The Tur paskins that it's okay, even if she says that she's doing it for Shabbos. Kivan de tam haheter mishum shatosefet gorem tam b'tavshil. I'm adding the meat because it increases, it improves the taste of the meat. In kain afilu pirsha beferush nami muter. Even though she says, look, I'm doing it because I need meat for Shabbos. I want to have cooked meat for Shabbos. But Lamais, it's improving the taste of the meat for Yom Tov, so you're allowed to do it. We'll see all this in the Beis Yosef yet. Here's what we need for the Beis Yosef, and we'll stop on this. Kosav bala itur dafka kodem achila yechola laharbos bebishul. Here we're getting into the issue of hoil, indirectly. All of this is before you ate. You're putting your pot of meat on the stove before you ate, and you're allowed to put in lots of meat because it's going to improve the taste of the meat that you're going to eat on Yom Tov. Aval achar achila. Here's the way. What happens if I finish my meal, and now I'm gonna cook more meat, and in order to get around the fact that I'm really cooking it for Shabbos, I'm gonna eat some of it on Yom Tov. So if you remember, we decided that you're allowed to shecht an animal even if you only need 1 kazayas, and you have to be able to eat a kazayas. So maybe you can do the same thing with cooking the meat. I'm gonna cook more meat after I finish my meal, and I will eat 1 kazayas. Okay? That's the biggest harama you could possibly have. You just finished your meal. Come on, give me a break. You know you're not going to eat anymore. You're stuffed to the gills. And now you're cooking meat with the claim you're going to eat a kazayas from the meat you're cooking. Okay, we're going to stop here and we'll see this in the Beis Yosef, how all of this plays out. As you see, there's a lot of Beis Yosef on this one halach. Okay? The Seder. Okay, so Bezrat Hashem, on Wednesday, we're on. Yes, everybody will be post Lag BaOmer, and Bezrat Hashem Wednesday. Well, hopefully some of you will all be shaved without our sphere beards, and I'll see everybody Wednesday.